guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shona. If you're new here, I do author content on this channel. My mind just went blank for a second. I do author content on this channel. I do tips, publishing tips, writing tips. Sometimes I do a TBR game. I do a monthly vlog of what's going on in my life. And I do work in progress kind of stuff. So if you're into book content and author content, please subscribe. I would appreciate it. Help me out on this YouTube channel. This is just so weird. I don't like that. I feel weird in this thing. I know it makes me look like a little girl gamer. Me and my pink headphones. Which I do play games on another channel, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah. If you're a returner, welcome back. Today I thought I would go through my writing process and what tools I use. It's a work in progress as well. It's different with every book, but this is what I'm doing with this book. And I will talk about kind of the process as I go. I haven't really scripted this out, so bear with me as I go through this. There may be a lot of rambling. I'm hoping not, but there may be. But of course, if you have questions or comments or would like to share with me your process, definitely comment down below. I'd love to know how you do it. I'm always looking to improve my own process. It is getting about time to color my hair. Sorry, ADHD brain. But yeah, I will definitely be sharing my step-by-step process as best as I can. And let's get to it. So, I use Notion. I've already went over this in a previous video, and I will try to link it somewhere. But I do use Notion to keep up with a lot of my stuff. And it, as you can see, it's the #1 tool, and it is what I am showing you here. I do love Notion. It's free. I use the free version. I do not pay a dime. And I can share it with somebody else if I want to. But not my writing stuff. I don't share that with anybody. Which is why why is it every time I go to film a video, I start yawning? But that's why there is no actual writing content that you will see here, because I don't want to spoil it all. But there will be one video coming up doing a plot with me, and I will be walking you through plotting a book, sort of. Or I may do that live. I don't know. If I do it live, then we can plot a book together and just see where it goes. But that may be something we do. And if you're interested in doing a live version of that, definitely comment down below. I would happily do that with y'all. I think it would be fun. Whether it got written or not, it would be fun to plot a book with a bunch of different people and just see where it went. See how crazy it got. I think it'd be hilarious. And it actually might come out to be a good book. But that's not the point. Yeah, so as you can see, I use Notion for everything. And then I also use Save the Cat Writes a Novel. If you have never read this book, I highly recommend it. I keep going back and forth through it. It's a really good book. I am back at the beginning, as you can see. This is like my 3rd time through the book, but I always learn something new. And so I really highly recommend this book if you have not read it. It is very, very good. I use Google Docs. I actually write my story in Google Docs. That way it's already saved in a cloud so that I never have to worry about, or hopefully I never have to worry about it getting lost. But it is also saved on my computer and in other places, and I email it to myself as well. But with Google Docs, if I need to share it with a critique partner or something, I can just open it up for them to critique it and keep going. And then I use Pinterest to create mood boards and inspiration boards and anything for world building and character building, all that fun stuff. I use a Kanban board, which I will show you that in a minute. And I use the UPS store, and we'll talk about that one. And then I also use a notebook. And we will talk about that. Okay, to start with, oh, I hit my mic. Let's not do that. To start with, in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, there are some questions that it asks when creating the beginning of your story and your character. So the first thing is, what is their problem or flaw? Well, then I sit there and I brainstorm the character and what they want in regards to the story idea I have and what's keeping them from getting that. Why can't they achieve it? What is standing in their way? And then that leads right into the second one. How is this flaw or problem affecting the hero's life or world? All right, the current book I'm working on, I will divulge a little bit to show you an example. Her biggest problem or flaw, well, one of them, is that she's a witch without powers. Now you may be thinking, how in the world? She has no memory of ever having powers. I'm not going to go into why, because that will be some spoilers, and I just don't want to do that. But she has no memory of ever having powers, and she feels like an outcast. Because, she lost her parents, and she was through the foster system, and she feels like an outsider. She got bullied and by other witches. She never felt like she fit in with the human world or the witch world. And she still doesn't, even as a young adult. She still doesn't feel like she fits in. So that's one of her biggest problems. And she feels like if only she had powers, she would be able to fit in better and contribute more to her community. She doesn't feel like she's a really big contributor to her community. And the way she sees it as affecting her life, she feels like it's holding her back, that she's more of a nuisance than anything. So she just feels like she doesn't belong. But she doesn't really know where she belongs. What is causing this problem? Well, she doesn't have powers. That's what's causing the problem. She doesn't yet know why. We do get into that later in the book, but she doesn't know why she has those problems, or why she doesn't have powers, but that is what's causing the problem, is that she doesn't have the powers. At the start of the novel, what does your hero want? What is their goal? Well, she thinks that her goal... Sorry about that. I had to step away and take care of a phone call, and it is still not taken care of, but until the person calls me back, here we are. All right, where was I? Okay, how has your hero been actively pursuing this goal? Well, that one's a little hard, because in my story, there's really no way for her to pursue having powers. Yes, when she wakes up in the morning, she does her best to try to activate her powers, or throughout the day, if she feels like a weird tingle or whatever, she does try to activate them, but nothing ever happens. So other than that, there's really not a whole lot that she can do to actively pursue that. But she's always actively trying to figure out ways to help her community of witches. It's just really hard, especially with some of the other stuff that's going on in the story. they haven't achieved it yet because her powers have never been activated, so she's never had them. And lastly, what does your hero actually need? What is their life lesson? What will really fix their life? Learning to accept themselves for who they are, as they are, and knowing that what they have to offer is enough. That's her life lesson. She's nowhere near that yet, but that's her life lesson. Okay. And then in this section, I have a little idea area where I brainstorm, or this little is my ideas. This is where I will put notes. There's nothing here because, again, and you just, if you've never used Notion, this one would be like text. So put notes here. And then here I have a brainstorm area where, like I said, my Pinterest. I use Pinterest for a lot of this. And for my world building and character creating and everything else. I have boards on there. And then here's the Kanban board that I was talking about. I use it to set up my 3-act structure based on the Save the Cat book. And I went in, and Act 1 is your opening scene. It's between 0 to 1% of your book. It's a before snapshot of your hero and their world. I did that. It's the way it's laid out in this book, but I did this way because you never know what that is unless you know exactly how long your book is supposed to be. My book needs to be somewhere between 90,000 and 100,000 words. So, but then we have like the theme stated, the setup, the catalyst, and the debate. And every one of them, again, I have the percentage of where it's supposed to fall in the book, and then a little description of what that's supposed to be. And then I'll add like the little scene outlines and how many pages it's supposed to be, or how many pages it actually is, just whatever I'm feeling at the moment. And here I'll put in the characters that are in that scene or in that section. Crazy. Ignore the lab. All right. So we have all that for like the Act 1, and then Act 2 we have Break Into 2, the B story, the fun and games, midpoint, bad guys close in, all is lost, Dark Night of the Soul. Why does that one have a thing? I don't know why that one has an image. There's no notes down here. I guess because I accidentally hit enter. Okay. And then Act 3 we have Break Into 3, the finale, and the final image. And again, you can put the characters in here, the scene outline, or however you want to do it, just a basic description of what you want to happen in the scene or whatever, and how many pages it needs to be, or how many pages it is. And here's another notes section. This is notes for the idea of the story. This is notes for what's actually going to happen in the story. And then here's a timeline of events. So say they go on the run and they spend X amount of time at this one location. Well, then I can go in here and put new, write down the location or what they're doing and how long it is, and keep up with my timeline there so that I can stay on track with pacing and not get lost about what day it is or how long they've been in this one place. And here's another Kanban board I have for character profiles and world building. I have the good guys and the bad guys, and then world building. Good guys will be like the main characters and any supporting characters that are, well, supporting the good guys. And then the bad guys, again, main bad guys and their little supporting cast. Anybody that comes up in the story that has a significance will go here. And then, of course, world building, all the locations and everything. And like a good guy profile, it has like the typical interview questions and stuff. Same with the bad guys. And then, of course, world building has its own little profile and has its own little questions. I have no idea what that noise was. One of the cats. But, I don't know if I can. Control Z. Well, they're not going to disappear. So, anyway, that's how those look. So that's how I use Notion for this book. I do have other things that I use, but this is the main thought process when I am outlining. Now, here's how. Let me move my phone out of the way. Here's how I go through this process. I start with my idea and I build from there. So let's say a guy walks into the hospital and he's been bit by some unknown creature. That's my idea. And then I will brainstorm from that. Well, what does this guy look like? So I'll start pulling images based on what I think this guy looks like. And then, and I'm putting all these things in Pinterest in their own little boards. Or in a specific board just for this specific work in progress. And then I'm like, okay, well, what kind of creature bit him? And so I'll start just randomly searching things until something speaks to me. And I'll start pulling images of that thing. I'm like, okay, well, why did this creature bite him? And so that's where my notes and stuff comes in. And I just continue that thought process, the what if and the why and the why and why. Why did this happen? Okay, so it happened because of this, but what brought that on? And I'll just keep going on and with that process until I have a good solid vision for the story. And then, and I'm still working through that process off and on in Pinterest when something new comes up about the current story that I'm on. So once I have the boards created and I have worked through the thought processes and played the what if and the why and the how and the wheres of this story, I organize all my thoughts. Sometimes in a notebook, usually here in this area. I'll organize all my thoughts right there. And then I'll start outlining. And that's where I'll go in here and I'll type out the outline. Or I'll start here with all my notes that are actually going to go into the book, not just these brainstorming ideas, but the notes that are actually going to go into the book. And then I'll start putting them in these areas. And then once I am writing the book, I'll create another Kanban board of like Act 1 opening image. This is the scenes that are happening in the opening image, which is usually just one scene. But some of these others are multiple scenes. And I'll just go through and, same process. And so once I've outlined the scene ideas into this Kanban board, then I'm going to organize the scenes, which is what I was just telling you about. I'll go in, say the debate's 10% to 20% of the book. And that takes up, depending on how long the book is, let's say it's 2 scenes. Well, then I'll outline those 2 scenes and I'll create the Kanban board for that part of Act 1 and they'll go in there. And then I'll figure out the timeline as I go because that does change as I'm writing. What I think is only going to take 24 hours in the story sometimes can take less than that. Sometimes it can take more. So that will go on as I'm writing. All right, for this particular book, the way it's working for me, because again, this is different for every book. Some books flow easier for me, some don't. And this one, given that it's the first book I've really written after coming back from a long break of writing, not an intentional break, but a break because of my father passing away and me not being able to handle the writing process. Because he was part of the reason why I love to write and read in the first place. He was a voracious reader and he was very supportive of my writing. So it was very hard to write. But, so the way this is working for me now, I will write a scene and then I will outline the next scene based on what happened in that scene. It is a pain in the butt. It has taken me forever, but that's how I'm having to write this story. Because things are coming to me as I'm writing. Now, keep in mind, I do have a full outline, but it's constantly changing. Or not so much changing, it's constantly getting added to. So that's why I will write a scene and then I'll outline the next scene. Or I'll write a chapter and then I'll outline the next chapter. So that's the way it's working for me. And then I will repeat all of that until the first draft is complete. Once the first draft is complete, then I let it rest. How long you let it rest is completely up to you, and how long because you know yourself better than anybody, how long you need to give your eyes a break from that story. For me, it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks. Some people it's 1 month, 2 months, but for me it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks. Once that rest period is done, then I take and I will read back through. Sorry, I'm looking at my notebook where I did make some notes. I did not script this, but I did make notes. But then I'll take a look at my story in Google Docs and go back through it. Sometimes this can take a few days. Sometimes it can take a week, 2 weeks. But I will go back through it chapter by chapter with a notebook, making notes as I go through it. And then comes the second draft. Once I've made all my notes, then I go back and I rewrite the entire book in a new document based on those notes. Whether it's adding certain things to a scene, completely taking certain things out, I rewrite the whole story in a new document. Once I have rewritten the entire document, then I take and let it rest again. Again, for me, that's usually about 2 to 3 weeks. After that rest period, now during these rest periods, that's not to say I'm not doing something else on another book, but for this particular book, I'm resting. After it has rested for the second time, then I'm going to check in the third draft. I check the timeline, the pacing. I add or remove scenes as needed. That's all I'm focusing on during the third draft. It's timeline, pacing, adding and removing scenes that either adds nothing to the story itself or needs to be added to add to the story itself. I wish that cat was. After I have done that and feel like I have maintained the pace that it needs to be, I have my timeline set and correct, and I've taken out the scenes that need to be taken out, and I've added the scenes that need to be added. That's where the UPS store comes in. You print it in a bound, like a spiral bound book. One, it's cheaper to get them to do it than it is for me to do it myself. Because ink is like $40, whereas I can get it printed and bound for around the same price. And that's with the paper and everything. For me to do it, it would probably be closer to about $60. So go to the UPS store and get it done, or Staples, or whatever your local store is. So that does that. After I got it printed, then I take and I go through with a red ink pen and highlighters. And I edit the hell out of it. I make notes, do whatever I think needs adding, take away whatever I think needs taken out, find, like line edits, copy the whole 9 yards. And once that is done, then I let it rest. I let it rest and for about a week. And then I go in and it's ready for the beta process. I start searching for beta readers during the rest period. And once the beta readers are found and have filled out their whole questionnaire and all that stuff, then I send them the book and it goes to beta readers. And then I edit the book based on their feedback and redraft the story as needed. Once beta readers are done with it, then I will send it to a critique partner or two, and just to double check myself to make sure everything is as it needs to be. If they have any feedback, I take that into consideration. And after that, then it's about ready to be published. It has to go to the editor. During this process, though, I've already gotten the cover started or done and figured out what editor I'm going to use, and then got them lined up for that and figured out, publication date and all that. But that aside, because that's publication process. Up to that point, that's where we're at. I redraft as needed, and then after the critique partners have seen it and given me their 2 cents, and whether I agree with it, I fix it. If not, I let it go, and then it's ready to start the publication process as far as the editing by an actual paid editor and cover art, if the cover art's not already done, which in most cases it will be. So that is my writing process. I have to be this organized because if not, my brain just does not function correctly. And I learned less than 10 years ago, back when I was trying to get back into writing, I learned not to trust a notebook, that children will tear pages out of a notebook and throw them away, not realizing they were important to you, or not caring if they were important to you. So I lost nearly an entire outline that way for a whole different story. So yeah, I love this method. And as long as it's working for me, it's what I'm going to use. But again, it does have to be tweaked for each book. So if you have any questions, please leave those comments down below and I will answer them either under your question, or I will create a whole video on it. If it's something that needs a whole lot more clarification, I will definitely create a whole new video on it. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those fun YouTube-y things. And I will see y'all next time when I think we're going to plot a book. I hope y'all have a great night.